Hey everybody, thanks for checking out my channel. As you see here, I have the Notch Rope Runner Pro, and I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. I have a few things to talk about. Currently, there is a notice of inspection out for certain Rope Runner Pros, just an extra piece of inspection for certain batches. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the issues that I've had, because even though I do love this device, I've run into a few problems. That being said, I pretty much have resolved those problems for myself, and that's what kind of leads this into being a really great piece of equipment. And I want to get started with the notice of inspection though. So there's been a couple incidents where climbers have fallen out of trees and they've been using a Rope Runner Pro. I don't think it's due to the fact that the Rope Runner has malfunctioned, but things do happen in trees, and user error or freak accidents do happen. I mean, if debris or something falls on the bird and collapses it and keeps it collapsed, that can lead to a very bad situation. I think that the one that has led to the notice of inspection, the climber fell, and I think he did say that the tail of the rope, was going up and over another branch. Now, when that happens, the friction of trying to pull the rope over that branch can cause this to collapse. I'm not sure if that has been 100% determined as to what happened, but he said that may have been a contributing factor to his fall. Anyways, that aside, you can find that online, that article, and you can find on the Notch website how to properly inspect it, which is pretty simple. And I do want to say this is actually one of the ones that does need to be inspected. It's from 05 of 20. They have different manufacture dates to denote certain batches that you should do this extra inspection on. I think we're all aware that inspecting these mechanical prusiks and all of your gear, prior to climbing for the day is always just good practice and beneficial for everybody and helps to minimize accidents. So for this notice of inspection, they just tell you to check that this is still springing and returning back to where it should. There's a spring in here that you can put oil. I saw on their description that there was a port to oil this, but I don't know. I don't have a port, but you can just kind of squeak the oil in on the sides and that'll keep it functioning normally. So I would say, for this one, that based on their description of the inspection and what I'm seeing here, this one works just fine. For the most part, for the most part. Now, that inspection, you should be doing that anyway, just to make sure that the spring hasn't worn out. I guess if some of those batches did have a worn out spring, you can send it back in. Or if you're unsure, you can send it in and they'll check it for you or they'll replace it. I think they're doing whatever they can to make sure that their equipment, the equipment they have out in the field is safe and ready to go. Now, that brings me to the kind of next thing is some of the issues that I've had with the Rope Runner Pro. And before I got this, I was watching videos on it, review videos, just people going over some of the technical specs, everything like that. And in a couple of the review videos, people do say that this rope runs quite well, even if you have a pitchy rope. Now, I would disagree with that thoroughly. I think that even a small amount of pitch on your rope running through this device and getting on the device, that I would say that causes it to run very erratically. Now, this rope is quite clean right now. Usually if I do get pitch on it, it's kind of, it's able to sort of clean itself off on the next couple trees if they're not pitchy trees as well. This rope runs really well with the Rope Runner Pro. It's a 12.5 mil Sterling Work Pro. It's kind of stiff and it's a little thicker, so it's easier to kind of grab and pull on if you have to. But if you're climbing a tree, oh, and let me just tell you too, I climb in Alaska, and pitch is a huge problem up here because we get a lot of spruce bark beetle killed trees, and in their attempts to defend themselves, they're pushing all this sap out, and by the time we get called for a dead one, some of these trees are like candlesticks. I mean, they are just covered in pitch, and it is awful. It gets everywhere, everywhere. Now, in trees like that, trees where there's just like an unbelievable amount of pitch, that's just gonna mess up a lot of things. It's gonna mess up your flip line grab. It's gonna mess up your ascender or your prusik. No matter what kind of prusik you have, if you cover everything in pitch, you're gonna have an issue. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the days when I do go up a spruce tree. I'm mainly in spruce trees just using this. I use it as a choker, and it's just my backup. And I don't descend on it really. I just have it there as my extra tie-in. So the very end of my rope ends up getting covered in pitch, and if I do run it through this, that pitch sits on this slick pin, this bollard, this lower bollard, the pulley, and of course it gets caked in here on this plate. I can't remember, the body plate is what it's called, something like that. When it gets caked in here, especially if it's fresh, it is just like glue. So if it's on your rope and it gets transferred here and you weight it, these two pieces will stick to the rope, and it's basically an unusable piece of equipment at that point, in my opinion. I've been in a tree before, gotten, I mean, this is like not a ton of pitch, but I've gotten some pitch in here, and when this gets weighted, everything gets pulled, this bites down on here, and everything just gets glued up in here. And I've been in a tree where I can drop the bird completely while having this completely weighted, and it won't go anywhere. It will not release. The scary part is that you'll maybe jerk on the bird, or you'll jiggle the line, or you'll do something, and it will release eventually, very abruptly, very suddenly, and you will fall, usually just a little bit, and the bird will grab really quickly because it has pitch on it too, and it will reset your rope runner, and again it will crush, more pitch in here, and it will lock itself out again, and you'll have to break it free again. I find that when I do get pitch and it becomes like very unusable, that I find that I just down climb places. I almost stop using it as any sort of rappel device, or I just have it tied in as a secondary, and I have to move around or down climb. If I were to use it to get out of the tree, it becomes too jerky and unmanageable to actually use. That's only exacerbated if you have tons of pitch in the tree. Then this thing is just awful. The other thing is that the pitch can get in here, in these little cracks right here, where the spring is, and it will just get stuck down. I've had that happen plenty of times. You're going up the tree and it brushes against the bark and gets some pitch right here. And the next thing I know, this is completely collapsed. And if I tend the line, it just keeps falling down. I have to manually set it with my hand. I've even been in the tree and frustrated enough with that I brought my topping saw up, opened the bar oil cap, and got bar oil out and dripped it on here so that I could break this free and I could continue climbing. One of the ways that I'm solving this problem is that this is not going in spruce trees anymore. This rope will be dedicated to this piece of equipment, and I bought another rope that will be dedicated to my zigzag. That will be my spruce setup, and if I choose to go in other trees with my zigzag, I will use that line as well, or rope. Sorry, I was a fisherman for a long time, and I say line quite often. And this one will be dedicated to, you know, cottonwoods, maydays, birch trees, trees that are not going to get the rope and the device all pitched up. I have to say the zigzag works much better in those situations. It's can still get a bit jerky, but it still runs like relatively smooth, and it's just kind of able to power through the pitch that's on the rope and in the device. It just works a lot better. This one, I would say even a small amount of pitch just causes it to be very unpredictable. So pitch in here that can stop it, pitch in here can stop it. It just makes it's very frustrating in a tree. I mean, part of climbing is that it is fun, and when your devices are not working the way you need them to, that really makes it not very enjoyable in the tree. Another thing I want to talk about is that this little piece here for hooking up to a chest harness so that it will tend itself up the line. It's not a very big slot here, so you're not going to be able to hook most carabiners, at least most rated, you know, climbing carabiners in there. You have to buy these little, I think there are accessory carabiners. This one came off of a pair of ski gloves. It's not any, you don't hook up anything that you need rated to this, so I just needed to hook to my chest harness and tend the line. It's worked perfectly fine. I would say just make sure you unhook any carabiners that you attach to this accessory loop. If you have a large enough carabiner, you can see that the carabiner can actually fit over the bird. So right there, it can fit over the bird. It's likely to kind of come free, but it sort of sits in there pretty nicely. And yeah, see, I mean, it comes loose, but it's not something I'm willing to like put to chance. The carabiner can fit over it. If you do have this, maybe a small, I'll show you here in a second with a small piece of twine. If you have this and maybe you hook a larger carabiner to it, the whole carabiner, this one won't fit. I guess I need this one probably. If you have that hook there, the whole carabiner can fit over it. And if it's loose on a piece of string, it can actually fit over the entire device and keep it collapsed. So just be aware of that. And then this got me in trouble one day. Nothing bad came from it, but it did scare me in the tree. I had seen that somebody on one of the reviews of the Rope Runner, they said, oh, I tie a piece of twine on here, and we gotta make it, yeah, right about there. Oh, I tie a piece of twine on here, and then I can just hook the carabiner from my chest harness right to that, and I don't have to worry about this tiny hole here. Well, this is not a very big loop, but it is big enough that it can fit over this slick pin. And if it's over that slick pin, I mean, it's not going to let that go. You have to like really physically take that off. And it might seem like that was hard to do, but I had that happen in a tree. I was up in the tree, was tending a bit of slack, and the device had fallen down. I tended it again, it fell back down. I thought, okay, I thought for a second that I had pitch in here, and something was stuck, and I realized that the loop that I had tied on here had actually managed to get itself over the slick pin. So I always carry a knife on my harness, so I immediately got that knife out and I cut this little piece of twine off of here because I was not gonna have that be my demise in a tree. So I wouldn't say that having a loop on here is bad, but just be careful with how big of a loop you put, because that's not a huge loop to have on there. You want to have one that's probably, you know, just big enough to fit a carabiner in it, you know, something, it's bigger than this one here, so you can always attach like, you know, whatever carabiners you have on hand. You know, I don't usually have these hanging off my harness. I usually have a couple other, you know, rated climbing carabiners that I can use for any number of things. but make sure it's small enough, you know, give it a double check, make sure it can't fit over the bird, that it can't fit over the slick pin. I don't know if there's any other issues to think about with this. I have not run into them. If you have run into any, then please put them in the comments. But yeah, this one, you know, when I saw it over top of that slick pin, I just thought, holy crap, how did that happen? Like, that wasn't even something I would have thought to have gone wrong with it. But I'm glad I caught it. I think that some of my issues that I've had with this in the tree have given me a pretty good habit of just always checking it and making sure that the bird is working and that it's working well with the rope that I'm using and in the tree. You know, anything, you know, a stick can get wedged in here. You know, things can happen that are going to keep this from working properly, and avoiding those or just being aware of when they can happen is a really good idea. I will say, aside from pitch getting in here, actually the other day I was climbing and it was wet out and all the wet sawdust was kind of accumulating all over, and some of it accumulated on here, and it was, it didn't stop it from working completely, but it definitely wasn't catching as fast as it should be catching. And if you are having issues, you know, you may want to adjust this bollard to be a little more narrow. It'll catch a little more friction and it'll pull up, because, you know, if this doesn't work, then this doesn't work. And so always, you know, make sure that the bird is working properly. So yeah, I mean, all of that being said, you know, the notice of inspection, some of the issues that I've had, I mean, I'm just not going to use this in spruce trees anymore. So that should solve like any pitch problems. And, you know, I think I will keep a little loop on here. I actually might just keep this little loop on here, just because when I do use it for SRS, it's nice to just already have this on here. We'll see. I mainly run DRT, but SRS does work for certain situations for us. And yeah, I have to say, I mean, I do love the Rope Runner Pro. It goes from SRS to DRT without any extra pieces of equipment. I have a rope wrench, you know, my business partner has the chicane, and that works great, but I like being able to be in a tree. I can just throw a choker around and have that as a secondary. And if I need to move on it and go out on a limb, I can do that and get back to the tree and keep moving up, keep removing limbs. You know, DRT, super simple. If I'm gonna be moving around, you know, and I want to get my rope back, you know, then I can just switch to that. No extra pieces. And yeah, like I said, when you have like a good clean rope and a good clean device, of course, yeah, it works perfect. But in pitchy environments, this thing is just not the device you want, I would say, at least for pitchy spruce trees. So anyways, that's it. Please leave any questions in the comments or hit the subscribe. Hopefully I'll have some more arborist gear up for review from the last, you know, year or so here in Alaska. And yeah, anyways, thanks for checking it out. Hope it helps you. By all means, please get a Rope Runner Pro. They're fantastic. Just heed some of the warnings that are out there, and make sure you check your equipment. So, all right, thank you.